Greetings and thanks for joining us again for another bi-weekly update. My name is Carlos Salinas, and I'm the Regional Director for the U.S. Soybean Export Council in the Americas, mainly Latin America. A pleasure to be here with you. This presentation is designed for USEC's key customers and for USEC's internal purposes. I hope you find it valuable, and please continue to share, give us your feedback so we can improve this presentation. Before we get started, and as we always do, I know there's been an update to this slide, so I apologize. I don't have the latest update, but within that membership, we have soybean exporters, soybean processors, seed companies, equipment manufacturers, railroads, surveyors, brokers, among many other important stakeholders and funding sources. And we cannot forget the support and the contribution that we receive from the U.S. soybean farmer. Without that support, this presentation would not be possible. So we have a relatively extended agenda, but it will be brief. We'll talk about crop conditions and weather, relative prices, soybean meal market structure, yearly changes for U.S. soy flows, and soybean meal quality, basically soybean meal quality. So let's go ahead and get started. And I think on many of these topics today, I have more questions than answers, and you probably will have the same, but let's get started. Crop conditions have shown an improvement since we talked last. I believe last time we talked, the soybean crop ratings, good to excellent, were at 50%. Now that has increased to 55%. That is great to see. I think we have a very resilient plant that can manage drought conditions relatively well. But again, I think August, the following month, is going to be key for that development. So we have to keep our eyes open. We still have about 50% of our soybean production in areas that are experiencing some type of drought. I believe you've seen this map before, but it highlights the drought area, and it gives you a contrast to the major crop area and the minor crops of soybeans. And like I said, 50% is still a significant number of areas that we have under drought conditions. I have a concern on the temperature outlook for the 6 to 10 days. Obviously, I think that we can echo the concerns that the news have, particularly for workers that have activities outside and they got to get tasks done outside. We have to think about our value chain, whether it's the farmer, whether it is the elevator, or our teams loading barges, people receiving and unloading barges in New Orleans, and the whole full value chain, I think, can be challenged by higher temperatures in different ways. And I think we have to be concerned and we have to be aware of what those implications might be. From a precipitation perspective, I think it's kind of normal. We have some of the northern areas with above normal precip and a good chunk near normal. We do have some states, well, it's Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, southern Illinois at least, and maybe southern tips of Indiana, and some of our other states having below normal precips. But I think my concern today would be more on the temperature than on precip. This drought outlook was released July 20th, and within it, it tells us that in most of the areas, drought remains but improves, which is great to see. And it also tells us that drought removal is likely. I'm not sure how much of the weather outlook this, when they put this together, was factor in, but certainly the next publication will be interesting and see how things have developed as we, again, August is a critical month for soybean production in the U.S. So again, a lot of questions, really not many answers from that perspective. Let's talk about relative prices, and I want to compare some of the evolution of prices of some of our commodities as well as commodities that we don't typically deal with, such as sugar or olive oil or oats, just to give you a comparison on the potential risk that is out there for commodities that depend on, obviously, a lot of weather for their growing stages. Now, what I've done is, again, normalize the price of all those commodities in dollar terms, but I have normalized them at 100% as of Jan 1. And we can see the percentage evolution of each one over time. That's what I plan to share here with you. As you can see, year to date, corn is down 16%. Soft winter wheat is down 13%. I'm sorry, corn that is down 16%. Soft red winter wheat is down 13%. When we take a look at soybean meal, soybeans, hard red winter wheat, that's down between 12 and 13%. Soybean oil is up 4%. And as we get to these other commodities, oats are up 20%. Cocoa is up 31%. Sugar is up 37%. And olive oil, which has got the news lately, that's up 44%. Again, it's interesting, and I think it's important to see the contrast of the implications and the risk that some of these commodities have, including ours. Many of them are down year to date still, but I think we need to keep our eyes open on that evolution and closely monitor the weather in the U.S. Whether it's soybeans or corn. 1/3 of the or 30% of the world's corn production is in the U.S. So important to monitor all these factors. Since we last talked, I believe that was July 7th. We have certainly seen an upward trend on all of these commodities. Again, when all of them move at the same time, to me, it's just a yellow flag. I think it merits a deeper analysis on what's driving the prices of all these commodities, particularly the ones that you might be buying in this particular case, soybean meal. So let's talk about the market structure on soybean meal, and let me share the next slide with you. And it's very simple. We talked about this before. When I talk about the market structure, we are generally talking about the relationship in price between the nearby and the defer. In this particular case, we're talking about that relationship between August soybean meal and December soybean meal in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And we can see that nearby prices are a lot higher than defer prices. In this particular case, close to $33 a short ton or $36, $37 a metric ton. So it's a steep inverse, and the market is expressing concern, and through price, it's inviting the industry to ration some of that demand. In other words, we may not have enough supply to bridge the gap to new crop, and prices are reacting to that. We have seen steep inverses before. This is nothing new, but I think what I want to share with you is the evolution of that relationship. And if we take a look at that relationship specifically between August soybean meal and December soybean meal, we go back a month ago, let's say June 21st, and that was very close to $5 a short ton. Today, we are about $32, $33 a short ton. So something is happening in the market. I'm not going to go into the possible details of what it could mean, but certainly I think it magnifies the importance of securing supplies early. Doesn't mean that you have to fix the price right now. You can always leave the futures open, but I think locking in your basis and making sure that you have the logistics and the physical supply from a first-class counterparty, I think it's very important. Again, many variables in these markets today, but you want to make sure that you have your physical supply is very well locked in. Changing subjects a bit, and maybe they're not different subjects, but I think it's important to highlight. I took the USDA's weekly export sales, and I compare the accumulated shipments to date, and I compare them to the accumulated shipments to date during the same time last year. And the numbers I'm about to show you are just those actual changes. And I took, on soybean meal, I took the top 10 for comparative purposes. And over here, you can see that we have Vietnam. So far, we have shipped over 300,000 metric tons more than last year. Chile, we have shipped 140,000 tons more than last year. Venezuela, 121. Ireland, 120,000 metric tons, and Poland, and so forth. And I think it begs the question of what's happening. Why are these countries buying more from the U.S. versus last year? What are the drivers behind it? My gut feeling, I think it could be partly related to the limited supplies out of Argentina, with a crop of 20.5 million metric tons, which they typically have around 50. Obviously, that could be one of the reasons and why some people are stepping ahead. But I think as a buyer, particularly in Latin America, which depends a lot from U.S. Soybean meal, you have to be very aware of the risk of all these countries stepping up and buying from the U.S. Now, Vietnam is a huge importer of soybean meal. They import about 5 million metric tons of soybean meal from all origins. So when Vietnam steps in, buying more U.S., I think we have to keep an eye on. Now, when we take a look at soybeans, we have seen China increase their shipments by 2 million metric tons. Germany, Algeria, Korea, Spain. I would just flag. I was a bit surprised to see China. I wasn't sure how much China had bought or shipped already compared to last year, but Germany drew my attention. Again, Europe relies heavily on those South American supplies on meal, specifically from Argentina. So if Germany's stepping in with soybeans, are they displacing some of that Argentine supply? So again, more questions than answers. And on soybeans, that's about 3 million metric tons more than last year in these countries. And we talk about soybean meal, that's 1 million metric tons more of soybean meal shipments in these countries, the specific countries selected over last year. Again, we need to keep that in mind. So let's shift to a different subject. And over here, we're going to compare the sugar content in soybean meal from different origins. And I want to preface this that, sorry, when we look at the sugar content, we have to be very aware. Give me a second, please. All right, took a glass of water, sorry. When we look at the sugar content, we have to be aware that not all sugars are the same. Some sugars, like sucrose, are generally easy to digest by many of the animals. Other sugars are not. But I think it's good to compare the overall sugar content for you. And I think the important question is, are you as a company maximizing the energy component that soybean meal brings to the table in the form of sugar? Are you taking that into account when you do your calculation? You may already be doing so, you may not, but I thought I'd share some of the latest numbers because this has changed quite recently. As a matter of fact, this data is again from Evonik. USEC does not produce any data like this, but we get third parties and we contract third parties to provide us this data. So we can see the evolution of the Argentine soybean meal and its sugar content drop from 10.70 to 8.9%. There could be many reasons for that. One reason could be that Argentina is now importing a lot of Brazilian soybeans to keep their operations running. That could be certainly one possibility, or because of their difficult growing conditions they've had, maybe the sugar content on their crop is actually lower. But I think it's important to keep in mind when we take a look at Brazil and Bolivia, the sugar content remains about the same. I would venture to say is their growing conditions are very similar. The only anomaly or surprise over here is Paraguay. I don't know why Paraguay's sugar content is actually lower than the other origins, particularly because they neighbor Brazil and they neighbor Bolivia as well. So it's a bit surprising. I really don't know the answer. And I think we all know that once you go to the U.S. soybean meal has known to have a higher sugar content. And I think it's got to do with many reasons, but you have to think that, I think in the U.S. we're able, in many of our states, most of our states, we're able to preserve the quality as we harvest those beans on a very dry conditions. And then when we store them for the winter, many of our states are a natural freezer. They go basically, you go to South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, even Iowa. Many states are preserve those soybeans very well because they go into elevator in colder conditions with less humidity, and the winter is very cold as well. So I think the quality is preserved And again, we're blessed to have that benefit. I hope the information provided was valuable. I look forward to hearing your feedback, and I do wish you a great week. Take care.